you're not going to like every residential street in towns on that area, or?
There'll be a desktop review of a lot of that, so we will probably be able to cover about everything. I don't know if those will pop quite as much as maybe a heavily traveled corridor. But yeah, and that's our goal, is to try to make it, even if you are not the big city of Des Moines or something, but how do we make sure we are providing services and funding to, communities of your size as well? So,
Okay.
yeah. As far, I mean, I think Polk City's been very successful, and Chelsea and I had meetings where, what are your needs? How do we game plan this, and how do we go about that? And I think you guys have done very well for yourselves over the last several years. So that's credit to your team here.
Okay. Thank you.
So Dylan, thanks to your organization for the grants that we've received for the trail. That's important for us. I did want to ask you about this service that you have where you ride the trails and you determine what kind of shape they're in. So my first question is, what do you do with that information? Because there are different agencies, like for example, Army Corps of Engineers owns the trail that goes up to Big Creek for us. And then with that data.
Send it to them and nothing happens. That's that one.
Well, that's a question. The other thing is, do you rate those trails on like a 1 to 10 scale for what condition they're in?
Right. So the first question, we do consolidate that. We create a report, and we do share that with our member communities. Now, in the case of Army Corps, they're not a member community, but we do share that with them. And kind of to your point, Councilmember, it's hard to get them to take action on things. But that is something we do, and we probably need to double our efforts on that. As far as rating the scales, we don't rate the trails necessarily from best to worst or anything like that, but we do, in that report, provide kind of like, here's a quick summary of all the different trail segments, and you can kind of visually see which ones stand out. Green is good, red is bad. You can kind of see where those are at. As we go forward in terms of the forecasting, then that's where I can see maybe we'll do a little bit more of a ranking, if you will. We've done that with our pavement. We do the same thing with roadway pavement, and we kind of show, it's a little different with the roadway pavement because we have a goal set that we don't want our pavement to get any worse, for example. And we know what our regional average is. So we can say, Polk City's doing a really good job with that. Ankeny maybe not so much, and to kind of compare them, and maybe a little bit of peer pressure to get the ones that aren't performing to invest a little bit more. We haven't quite got the same level yet with trails, but that's something we'll be working in that direction towards. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, I think that's just great information to know. I was not aware that you were doing that, and that can be very helpful to cities like ours.
Right.
So thank you for that. Anything from anybody on the council? Anything else? Okay, I think that's what we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan.
So moving on to item number 7, this is our public comment period. This is the time and place for comments for any item other than those that are a public hearing. Jenny, did we receive any cards?
No, sir.
From anyone? Do we have anyone in the audience who wishes to speak during the public comment period? All right, then, we will move on to item number 8 then. That is consent items, and I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve those.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Walters?
Yes.
Vogel? Yes. Otis?
Yes.
Moving on to item number 9, business items A, first reading of ordinance 2025-600, amending sections of the Polk City Municipal Code relating to the sale and use of fireworks within the city of Polk City. Chelsea, a report?
Thank you, Mayor. For the City Council's consideration tonight is an amended ordinance related to both the use and sale of fireworks in Polk City. There are a number of proposed changes to the ordinance. However, the majority of the proposed changes are specific to aligning the city code with the state code, which the state code governs the local ordinances anyway. The city's code is currently contradictory to state code in a number of sections, but specific to the limitations of the sale of fireworks, the hours fireworks are allowed to be used, the zoning districts fireworks are allowed to be sold in, and who may set off fireworks in Polk City. The proposed changes clarify the license process for the city of Polk City, outlining the requirements of proof of license to sell, proof of liability insurance to sell, and a fire inspection by our fire chief. The proposed changes to the city ordinance will make the requirements in Polk City clearer for both those using fireworks as well as those wishing to sell fireworks. I would recommend the city council consider suspending the rules and waiving the second and third reading of the ordinance tonight, so that this ordinance is in effect prior to the 4th of July holiday. I recognize the council does not often waive the second and third readings, but I find the changes of the ordinance to be both beneficial to our staff as well as our residents of Polk City. It makes it a lot more clear and aligns with what the state code already says. So any questions on the fireworks ordinance?
No questions. I'll add another snarky comment because apparently that's the mood I'm in tonight. But I would just add that we're fixing that, well, fair point. We're fixing this because the state rolled out allowing it with no context or ability to put in place some of these rules, which we did at cost, had the discussion from a bunch of people that we couldn't answer, and now 5, 6, whatever it's been, they're finally putting this in place, forcing us to change back to a standard uniform. So I can whine about how frustrating it was, and we did have some frustrating meetings. I know it's been problematic for chief and PD to actually not be able to enforce a rule that, again, was thrown out there. So all context for some frustration on and something that quite honestly has deteriorated any further in terms of the state's home rule legislation. But net result is we got to fix what we got to fix and align it. So the folks that bear the burden can properly point the finger when there are justifiable frustrations. So all that to say is I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2025-600.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Vogel?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Walters?
Yes.
So A1 is an option to waive the second and third readings. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Walters?
Yes.
Vogel?
Moving on to item B then, third reading of ordinance 2025-300, amending chapter 92 water rates, section 92.02 rates for service. There's no report on this, so I'll ask for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Savage?
Yes.
Walters?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Moving on to C, third reading of ordinance 2025-400, amending chapter 99 sewer service charges, section 99.01. No report, so I'll ask for a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
Walters?
Yes.
Vogel? Yes. Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Moving on to item D, Polk City Junction Trail, Phase 4 and 5. Phase 1, Archaeological and Architectural Reconnaissance Survey Work Order with Snyder and Associates not to exceed $7,500. You say those
That
three
was-
words.
Good job. Well done.
So we'll begin with a report from Chelsea.
I'm not gonna get that right. I'm just telling you right now.
Which part?
So, for review tonight is a work order from the city's engineering firm Snyder and Associates for a cultural resource evaluation. Those are my preferred words, also known as an archaeological and architectural reconnaissance survey. The survey is a requirement specific to the Department of Transportation as a federal government entity for this federally funded capital project. The survey will provide the DOT with additional information so that they may continue the SHPO NEPA environmental review process. The work order is not to exceed $7,500. If there are any questions, I've asked Travis Thornburg to answer those for you tonight.
Okay. Any questions of Travis?
So this is basically it was described for phase 4, 5, and the trailhead, a $7,500 requirement to obtain $1.2 roughly $1 million in grant funding.
Yep, correct. And the outcomes of this, specific to this phase, are likely to be the requirement for monitoring vibration or or clarifying that there will not be vibration monitoring. Basically, these studies and reports typically yield, are there any archaeologically significant findings within the project corridor? Are there any architecturally significant findings within the corridor, and do we need to take any precautions towards them? Almost the entire project corridor has been disturbed in the last 15 years with construction operations. Phase 5 has been disturbed in the last 5 years. So we don't anticipate archaeological requirements, at least preliminarily. It's more going to be the archaeology or the architectural parts, specifically the buildings on the square, is where we're anticipating the potential for additional requirements, or we may, I don't want to presuppose either, we may find that those buildings they've been altered in some manner that make them non-architecturally significant. So that's really the findings or the end point that we're going to end up with, and that's a requirement of the SHPO and NEPA clearance process.
And the timing of doing it now or approving it now for, or against the other status of 4-5 and the trailhead, like we can do it together and it
Yep.
applies to all the same, given those three are
Yes.
different timelines?
Because, well, so 4-5 and the trailhead have been combined into one project as far as the DOT is concerned. We have one DOT project number. And the timing on this is driven by, we don't want to presuppose requirements, and so we let the DOT tell us if they're going to require a study, because we don't want to have you expecting a charge that we don't need to incur, kind of thing. And so we kind of let the DOT kick back to us, we're finding this. I will tell you, if you had done this project 5 to 7 years ago, the requirements may have been a little less, but that specific bureau has kind of had some turnover in personnel. And so they're really, really cracking down and really, really honing in on requiring these studies for a lot of projects that would typically have not been required. So it's kind of a changing of the guard, for lack of a better term, that kind of drives the need for this on this particular project.
Anything else? Then we will ask for a motion and a second on D.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Vogel?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Walters?
Abstain.
Moving on to item E, professional service agreement with Snyder and Associates in the amount of $14,000 related to 3 public information meetings, construction administration, and construction staking for the Polk City Junction Trail. Chelsea, you have a report?
I am going to give the report tonight. So for your consideration is a professional services agreement from Snyder and Associates. I'm going to break this into 2 separate items, even though it's one agreement. And they're both specific to the Polk City Junction Trail. The first part of the agreement is specific to Snyder and Associates assisting the city with 3 public information meetings for the Polk City Junction Trail. I've asked Travis to assist us in holding up to 3 public information meetings. We would not have to have all 3, but 3 would be a good number for the amount of phases that we have this trail project broken up into. One of the 3 meetings would be specific to the Phase 7 section of the trail and other future improvements that could be made to that site. So Phase 7 is the site located next to the sports complex that the city recently received approval from the Army Corps of Engineers for the amended lease agreement. So the second part of the agreement is for construction administration and construction staking services. So the city council previously approved an agreement with Snyder that would take us through design of the trail for Phase 7, which ends at bidding. So typically when we get professional service agreements, it's divided into 2 separate categories. One for design, which takes you to bidding, and then one for construction administration and sometimes construction observation. So the construction-related services will take us through construction of this capital project. And I do just want to note that we've taken a different approach with the professional service agreements with Snyder. And this started a number of years ago, but the council approved this Phase 7 professional services agreement many years ago. And the main reason that we didn't do it with this one is it took us so long to work with the Army Corps to get that property added to the lease agreement. So broken into those two different categories, the total cost for this agreement is a total of $14,000, $7,000 for construction services for Phase 7, and $7,000 for up to 3 public information meetings. Does anybody have any questions?
These are all obviously costs that are built into what we have budgeted for this project and not additional costs.
The public information meetings are additional costs, but the construction administration costs were built into our estimate. And like I did mention, I'm asking the council to approve up to 3. If we didn't need 3, we wouldn't hold more than 3 meetings. That's something we can evaluate as we hold these public information meetings. We see what kind of attendance we get. But I do think those public information meetings are very important. We've traditionally done those in the last few years in Polk City. We've had great attendance, so good opportunity for the public to come and ask questions and engage.
Yeah, I agree. I think regardless of the attendance, it's our job to conduct these meetings, or at least put them out there as much as we can. If people are interested, they'll show up. I think it's even a little bit more profound given where this is, right next to a residential neighborhood, right next to probably the busiest road on the nicest entrance, one of the nicer entrances we have into town. So particularly interested in doing that. Well, I will say that these type of additional costs, to Nick's point, is where I think we do need to have a discussion. If we have, so paying Snyder for value-added service, there's none of this is any sort of statement on the value add that they do bring, but they are added costs that, if structured differently with the resources that we have in-house, could be more of a free add-on to things that we do. And I'd like to be able to do this a little bit more flexibly. So I think it leads to a discussion around how we're structured, which again, I'm not questioning the value added here, but am recognizing that it's an additional cost.
Anything else? Let's go ahead and have a motion and a second, please.
So moved?
Second.
And roll call.
Otis,
Yes.
Sarchet,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Walters,
Abstain.
Vogel. Yes.
Moving on to item 10, which is reports and particulars. We will begin with staff. Anything from staff? How about from Chelsea?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Council? Okay, and so I do have just a couple of things. Last Friday, Councilman Otis and Chelsea and I met with third graders, something that we do every year, and it's an enjoyable experience. I got just the nicest note from the grandmother of one of the boys, who must have talked about the meeting at City Hall to his grandmother. And I think one of the nice things she said was that in this day and age, there are many negative opinions of public officials in government. And she was just pleased that we represented well. So thanks to Chelsea and Nick for participating in that. The other thing, I attended the Memorial Day recognition on Monday on the square. It was very well attended and was just a beautiful service. And so I appreciated going to that. And then later this week, Chelsea and I are going to be meeting with our Representative Brian Losey. And that will probably, the discussion will probably be a little bit around what does he see for the next legislative session when it comes to property taxes, and how that discussion should go. So we've got busy times ahead, so I just thought I'd share some of that. So that's where we are. And now we move on to item number 11, which is closed session. And for anybody in attendance, closed session is when council deals with items that are not for public discussion at this time. And so I'll need a motion and a second to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call.
Walters?
Yes.
Vogel? Yes. Otis?
Yes.
Sarchet?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
All right then. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.